Another day, another beater. The final installment of our Cursed Truck Saga is here. Welcome back to the Fireside chat. Got our fire here a little bit off to the side. Hopefully you can hear some little snap, crackle, and popping. Dogs are outside, so we'll see how long that lasts. But let me put you up here. But picking up where we left off last week, after the maroon beast got all dinged up, had to find a new vehicle, and I was still trying to go the route of having a paid-for vehicle, and ultimately, I ended up getting old White Lightning from our first little episode. But in between those, I was looking at this one truck. It was a late 70s Chevrolet C10. And that is, well, maybe not necessarily a C10, but a late 70s square body is my dream truck there. You know, 100% acknowledging that it's going to be a piece of crap when I get it. But, you know, you got to take our piece of crap and turn it into something beautiful. But I found a late 70s single cab, long bed, square body C10. It was rough around the edges, you know. It had some rust on it. But it was for, excuse me, I think $3,000 or something. It's been a minute. But I think it was around there. And I was so excited, dude. Because the hood was a little jacked up. I don't know if you've seen some of the older Chevy trucks. They get this, like the hood, get this crease in the middle. Or after a while, the hinges start getting stiff and the hood wears out before the hinges will give in. There they go. And so you get this bend in the hood, but it had that a little bit, but the body was straight. It was nice and straight. It had some good bones, you know. You can buy another hood, you know, for not a terrible price. It's when you have to fix the whole body, the whole rest of it, when it gets starting to get really pricey. But I found this thing, and it was in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and this happened to be like in the middle of a field exercise when I was still active duty in the Army, and it was in the middle of the field exercise where I found that, but we were rotating out instead of staying out there the whole time. So in between, when me and my buddy Dobie, Xander, as I'm sure he'd like to be called, we got rotated out at the same time to spend a day at home and then to come back. So when on our day home, we decided to take this trip up into Santa Fe from El Paso and end up getting this vehicle, or to look at it rather. The plan was to get it. There's a problem though. It didn't run. So if you know the trip from Santa Fe to El Paso, it's about, if I remember right, about 4 hours, 3-4 hours. You know, a couple 100 miles away. And yeah, great planning. So to go find this truck that didn't run and then find a way to get it back. And so I was talking to the guy who owned it, and he was like, "Oh yeah, it's just this one thing that needs to be fixed out, and then it should be good to go. I can fix it by the time you get here." And the night before, I asked him, and he was like, "Oh, I didn't get a chance to get to it. but it should be done by the morning. And I was like, all right, we're going to go. We're going to go. And it's going to be all right. And we'll get it figured out. So we set off on this journey, me and my buddy. He's driving me in his car. Mind you, we set off on, we'll just call it a Saturday afternoon, and we had to be back to get on the bus to go back to the field Sunday at like 3 in the afternoon. So great planning, you see here straight from the start. So we set off Sunday afternoon. I decided we're going to stay the night. We're going to stay the night in Santa Fe. But it's on the way there that I call this dude that he tells me he didn't get a chance to get to it, but he'll have it fixed by the morning. And so we're thinking, all right, plan A, we get there and it's fixed and we drive it back. Plan B, we get there and it's not fixed and I have the pieces to fix it. And then we drive it back. Plan C, we get there and it's not fixed and I can't fix it. So we find a truck and trailer to drive it back. It's a very expensive, costly option though. Plan D, we don't get it and come back. Plan E, figured out. So great. We had plenty of options there. So we get there and I'm looking up the pieces for this truck that I think will fix the problem as he described it. He kind of told me, "Oh, I fixed this and this. It's a piece in the steering shaft. If I remember correctly, it's the piece that actually creates the change whenever you shift gears on the steering column. The piece that translates the motion from the steering column moving to actually changing gears in the transmission or whatever. From drive to park and reverse and all that good stuff. Pretty important. So I find a bunch of pieces. There's a lot of noises going on. I apologize. I find all the pieces. At this point, it's like 8 o'clock at night, and we haven't got to Santa Fe yet. But I found all these parts on Advanced Auto's website, AutoZone. I've had to go to a couple different places, so I got these parts. We're getting there like 10 minutes before the store closes. On the way to Santa Fe, hitting one store after another, because of course, not all the places had all the pieces that I need. Not a single place had all the pieces that I needed. So we had a store hop right before they close, and I get all these pieces, and I find us some little rinky-dink motel that we're staying in Santa Fe, kind of the hood area, just a little bit. But sorry, my dogs are being ridiculous back there. When we have a break, I'll put them up. But we're staying in this rinky-dink motel in Santa Fe. I'm on the bed watching videos on how to change this part. I've never done it before. We're, like I said, figure it out. That's what we're doing, figuring it out. I'm like, all right, easy enough. And like, all right, in the morning, we already knew what time we were meeting this guy at his place. It was like 20 minutes away or something. So we're like, all right, we'll get up at this time. We're meeting him then. We get some Starbucks before. Let's go to bed. Kind of the side story here, but that place was sketchy as hell. Freaking. Like at 2 a.m, we heard a bunch of gunshots outside. and somebody was pacing the floor. It was like one of those little motels where there's the balcony outside running around all the rooms. Just places, just people. There was one person pacing all the floor. So I grabbed my pistol that I have on the nightstand next to us, and like peek my head outside, make sure no one's gonna come get us, And some car alarm starts going off. I make sure our vehicle is good. Obviously, we survived, but we were just like, dude, what did we get ourselves into here? Staying at this motel is interesting times, but we made it out of there alive. And we get to this dude's home, and I have to say, Santa Fe is a beautiful place. It's a very different scenery than what I grew up with. It's like these deserty, rolling hills, but like short hills, but enough to where you can hide a little home in the corner of some little hill. And that's kind of how this dude's house was set up. And he was super nice. Super nice. Even though we were having some communication issues and with, getting the truck fixed and all that. I had it before we got there. He was super cool. He had this awesome little fire pit set up right outside his porch, and he made us some coffee, and we had some coffee hanging out with this guy. His wife was super nice. They were older and probably in their 60s, and they gave us some little breakfast desserts that they had made. Super cool. And we finally get out to the truck and take a look at it, and it's like a 50-year-old truck, so it's pretty rough around the edges. But I'm trying to fix this thing. It wasn't fixed by the time we got there. But I was like, all right, we planned for this. We're going to fix it, figure it out. So I'm tinkering around with this thing. And he's like, yeah, man, do whatever you need to. If you can fix it, it's all good. Needless to say, I could not get it fixed. I didn't have the best tools for it. I really needed to have some other stuff besides a screwdriver and some rinky-dink steering wheel puller. And I needed more time than I had as well. That we were there. That was at 8, 9 in the morning. We had about a 3.5, 4-hour drive ahead of us. And we needed to get on a bus at 3 o'clock in the afternoon to go back to the field. So we didn't exactly weren't in the ideal situation, you could say. But I figured out that I could shift it if I jiggled it the right way. So I was like, screw it. We're going to make it work. And we got it to move back and forth a couple times. And I was like, all right, we're set. Let's go. And I'm handing this dude money. And he's like, oh, you don't want to take it out for a spin first? And I just kind of sighed, and I was like, oh, you're right. My buddy is dopey. He's giving me this crazy look. And I'm just like, yeah, let's take it for a spin real quick. And we get in, put it in reverse, because we had to back it up to go and then pull forward out of this driveway up a hill. And we got it about here, and it dies. And we get it back on, and goes forward a little bit, and it's done. And then we tried to get it back in gear, and it wasn't shifting, it wasn't doing the shift thing, and I don't think it was dying. It wasn't moving. That was the problem. And then we looked, we were like, okay, let's take a step back, pop the hood, and let's take a look at everything, make sure all the bases are covered. We pull out the transmission fluid dipstick, and it was empty. So, it's hard to do the shifting thing when you ain't got no shifting juice. Um, so he's a great dude. He runs to the store, to Walmart, to get some transmission fluid for this thing, hoping that would work. And we're just hanging out, with his wife over coffee, just shooting the crap. I'll say, just just chit chatting. And he comes back, and we fill this thing back up after about an hour. So that at this point, it's like 10:30. We have to get moving. Um, with two jugs of transmission fluid, and we put those in. It backs up. We go to pull forward again, and it done. The transmission. No, not doing the thing. It's not doing the transmission thing. It's not doing the forwards or backwards again. We checked the fluids again, and it was all gone. And we looked down on the ground, and there wasn't anywhere where it could have went. So that thing had to have been bone dry. And maybe it just needed more. I don't know. But it was pushing to 11 o'clock. And we had to make a decision. And ultimately, I was still trying to figure it out. And the dude selling the thing was saying, "Hey, I don't think this is going to work out this time, but I appreciate y'all coming to look at it." And I was like, "Hey, we agree. We appreciate you and all that good stuff." And we end up sitting back, and it's almost 11 o'clock. So we, just imagine if maybe we could have gotten it working in that moment, but I was ready to give this dude money and just try to, figure it out one way or another. But he was very kind and kind enough to not just take the money and run with it and let it be our problem, But we ended up setting back, and goodness, we were running short of time. We ended up getting back at like 1:30, 1:45-ish. So we had about like a little less than an hour or less than an hour and a half to get ready and get changed and all that crap and repack our stuff to go back to the field. But we ended up getting there and ended up getting the crazy beast from our first episode, White Lightning. But that's the story. Let me take a second to rebuild the fire, put the dogs up, and then we'll get into some of the lessons that I pulled out of that situation. Be right back. Come on. Ella, come here. Come on. Only over here for a minute. We got the fire, it'll pile back up on itself, and the dog's back inside. So the first lesson I kind of pulled from this situation is to have a plan and then make a better plan. There was, yeah, we had plan A through E, but ultimately the bones that we were working off of was just not a good idea. It didn't put us or myself in the ideal situation to thrive in that conundrum we put ourselves in. It's important to do your due diligence in planning things. There was one of the NCOs that are sergeants that I've encountered while I was on active duty. He was some grading us on some task. It doesn't matter what it was, but he was talking about how people always come up to him whenever he's supposed to grade them, and they just kind of freak out in the moment. And he said, as a man, it is your duty to always have a plan in everything you do. Don't just go flying into some situation not knowing what you're going to do. Have a plan, step by step, one thing at a time, what you're going to do. And obviously there's going to be situations where you just got to fly by the seat of your pants, but if you can avoid that situation, you should. You have a responsibility to. That's kind of the last resort. You shouldn't put yourself in that situation if you can afford not to. And doing your due diligence is just being careful and persistent in your work or effort, whatever you're doing. Just always have a plan. A failure to plan is a plan to fail. That's another thing I've always heard. But that's the first thing. The second is don't act hastily or out of emotion. I was about to hand money over to that guy, that kind gentleman, and just figure it out because I had this idea in my head, this is my dream truck, I'll make it work. And, there's a time and place to just make it work, but leaning into the point beforehand, that's not what that's not the default. I had this whole idea in my head, this is my dream truck. I'm going to take a piece of crap and turn it into something beautiful. And the more that you act out of emotion, just because you have this idea and you want to cling to this idea, that habit is not going to serve you well. It didn't serve me well in that situation. And there's a Bible verse, Hebrews 12:11. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it yields a harvest of righteousness. And if I had had some discipline in that situation from the get-go to start with, from the first place, I would have had a different plan. I would have not put myself in that much of a time crunch, if I did really want that truck. And if I wanted to just figure it out, then I shouldn't have done it in that situation where it could have put myself and my buddy in a spot where we could get in trouble for being late to getting back, or just stranded on the side of the road, I would have been. He had a working vehicle, but I know he wouldn't have left me there. So just because that's how good of a friend he is, but acting out of emotion, acting hastily, it'll rob you of your future sooner or later. You may not see it immediately, but like the verse says, later on, it'll come around, whether you did your due diligence or not. You know, you'll reap what you sow. But again, the last point I want to hit on is to be the old guy selling the truck. It can be a lot of people in that situation would have taken the money and said, it's your problem. But, you know, he had a kind heart and saw that I was in over my head. And he did the right thing. And it's important to first of all, on my part, to see that and to be gracious for it. You know, be thankful for him realizing that wasn't a good a good thing, a good situation for me to put myself in. And or you know, it doesn't have to be, you know, just saying no. It could have been what he said to start with. He's like, hey, let's make sure we take it out for a spin first, you know. But and just all around, they were some great people. He and his wife, and very welcoming and accommodating. You know, he went out of his way to try to make sure that we were taken care of however he could. Now, I'm not to say that you should be accommodating to people who don't deserve it. You know, if people show who they are or whatever, you know, don't let yourself get taken advantage of there. But for most situations, you know, you can just be kind and welcoming to people and let the Lord's grace and kindness show through you to other people. But that's about what I got here. Yeah, that's the all I got for the cursed truck saga. Hopefully there's not more of them. I could think of a couple of truck stories that would bring some value, but I won't include them in the cursed truck category. But just remember, if you can learn from your mistakes, you can survive in life. But if you can learn from somebody else's, you'll be able to thrive. I truly believe that. I've seen that in my life. If you can learn the lessons without having to go through the pain for them, you'll be in a lot better position than you would have otherwise. But I appreciate y'all watching. I love you, and I'm thankful for you. If you want to have a certain direction you want to see content go, leave it in the description below. If you want to support the channel, there will also be links in the description for ways to do that. I have a woodworking channel and an Etsy shop for that. If you want to check those things out, we'll be having a Veterans Day sale coming up this coming weekend next week. And then I also have a financial coaching business and YouTube dedicated to that as well. So lots of options here. But if you decide to help support the channel, I just know that I really appreciate it. But I'll see you next time. Have a great week.